All right, hey everyone. Can everyone see my screen before I start? Awesome.
Yes.
Well, thank you all so much for joining the event today. I'm going to dive right in and try to keep the introduction as short as possible so we can actually get to the meat of the event. And I'm sure we're all excited to hear from our panelists about. Quick introduction of the Vieca network. For those that don't know, this is a membership community for people who want to build, invest in, or work with startups and have a personal or professional interest in the MENA region. This is a global community, and we give our members the opportunity to connect virtually and in person. This coming month, for example, we have some small format events in Boston, Toronto, and San Francisco. And all of those are either in partnership with local VCs or founders. And we also host public informational events like this one and demo days where startups in our network pitch to panel investors. And those events are virtual so that everyone in the world can tune in. We also recently launched Vieca Connect, which is a suite of fractional executives, coaches, and experts who offer their services through Vieca and provide workshops and office hours for our members. So if you're already in the network, stay tuned for some more announcements about how to participate in that. Later this week, we're actually also launching our first Deal Digest, which is an exclusive newsletter for investors in the network that highlight the founders and generally the really high quality deal flow that we have coming through the network. This is all free right now, so we'd love for everyone on the call to apply for membership. We're at about 400 members, and as I said, we have folks from San Francisco to Dubai. I'll share the application link in the Zoom chat.
بشوف ايش في محلات
If one of my co-hosts could make sure to mute people, that would be great. Lastly, we're so lucky to have two great community partners involved with this event today, so I'm going to pass it along to them. We have the 2048 Fellowship and UNRWA USA, so I'll let them share a bit more about their work. Stephanie, I will pass it over to you so you can talk about 2048.
Thank you so much, Hani. First of all, thank you and hello, everyone. This is a very exciting event actually happening, so thank you for including us. I wanted to take a brief moment to explain to you and talk to you about 2048. 2048 is a fellowship program that was started back in 2020 by Palestinian artist Saint-Laurent, or otherwise known as Marwan Abdel Hamid. Unfortunately, he couldn't join us today, but he might jump on the call later. So what the fellowship is essentially a grant, a year-long grant for Palestinian creatives. So it could be anyone who's starting their own business startup that has like a creative outlet, or it could be something involved in music or photography or anything creative related. Through this grant, we also offer mentorship support and just general network support for them to thrive. We do it because, you know, we really see it as, first of all, it's the brand of Saint-Laurent, and then secondly, we really feel like 2048 holds a very big significance in Arab futurism and our generation's collective aspiration for a liberated Palestine. So on this end, we will be opening applications at the end of the summer and hopefully kickstart the first fall class in September. We are also currently looking for donors and people to support the organization as it's very, very new. So if you have any questions or anything related to that, please feel free to message me. I can pass on my email in the chat box, and then I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stephanie. All right, and Mara, you're up next. Oops.
Great. Thanks so much, Hani and Stephanie, and all the speakers today. Lovely for us to be here. We are an organization called UNRWA USA, and I'm sure all of those in the room know that the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East, or UNRWA, is a relief and humanitarian development agency, of course, established in 1949 under a mandate from the UN to provide relief to refugees resulting from the 48 conflict. And today, UNRWA provides humanitarian services to 5.7 million Palestine refugees across 5 fields. UNRWA USA, our organization, is actually an independent nonprofit, and our mission is to lift up the voices, experiences, and humanity of Palestine refugees in order to secure American support for resources essential to every human being for the promise of a better life. And our objective is really to raise awareness about the plight of Palestine refugees and raise funds from generous and compassionate Americans to support the essential food, health, housing, education, and protection services that UNRWA, the United Nations agency, provides to these refugees. UNRWA USA, in turn, disperses those funds that we're able to generate to UNRWA in the field. We're very interested as an organization in the topic of this panel today because we, like so many others, have witnessed the brilliance of Palestinian young people, whether in Gaza, the West Bank, Jordan, Lebanon, or Syria. We view technology, particularly the opportunities for education and livelihood development in the online remote economy, as one important, if not essential, pathway for income generation and a brighter future for this and future generations of Palestine refugees and their families. I saw that this was particularly true in Gaza, where I had the opportunity to travel last year, given the brutal 17-year blockade and the importance of economic opportunities in the cloud for many young people, and also considering how many of them are striving to be coders. And ironically, we found that one way, we and many other partners have found that one way past a brutal blockade of air, sea, and land is through the cloud. As you can see, our Gaza, on this slide, our Gaza-based Digital Futures Initiative focuses on providing tech training and devices in the school system, preparing students and graduates for jobs in the remote-based cloud economy, and also serving as an incubator to help those refugees themselves build the IT-enabled systems that will hopefully improve the conditions where they live. We look forward to working with anyone on this call who wants to make this vision a reality, whether through linking Palestine refugees in Gaza to remote-based educational or income-generating opportunities, or by helping support such programs through cash and in-kind support. Thank you so much, and look forward to hearing from everybody today.
Awesome, thank you, Mara. And with that, I'm gonna go through quick introductions for our panelists. Feel so lucky and privileged to host this panel today. I don't think it's an exaggeration that we have maybe like 5 of the world's top 10 most knowledgeable people about Palestine startup ecosystem to share their insights with us. So I'll do a very quick round of introductions. Ambar is a managing partner at Palestine's only venture capital firm, Ibtikar. Ibtikar currently has 2 funds under management, and its current fund, Ibtikar 2, is targeted at $30 million US. Ibtikar fills a critical funding gap faced by Palestinian entrepreneurs between seed and later stage regional VCs. And some portfolio companies of particular note include Elma Health, Mashvisor, and Cortava. And even before Ibtikar, Ambar has been involved in supporting Palestinian entrepreneurs for over a decade. Mahmoud Thaher is a business and economic development specialist with expertise in entrepreneurship, innovation, technology, and automotives. And he's the co-founder of Turqat, a unique and inclusive app for vehicle service and maintenance, currently operating in Palestine. Hamid is a physician turned software engineer turned serial entrepreneur. Mo advises on all things tech. He's currently the CEO of Loke Incubator in the US, a startup incubator with projects in the MENA region. And he's also the co-director of the recently launched Peleset Angels, which is an angel investment fund for Palestinian startups globally. Daoud is celebrated for his entrepreneurship in Palestine. He is the CEO of uMake, which is a hub for innovation and entrepreneurship established in 2017. He also founded the Palestinian chapter of Founder Institute, the world's largest leading pre-seed acceleration program, which has graduated 28 tech startups in Palestine to date. As a recognized entrepreneurship coach, he launched Startup Palestine Community and founded Good Desk, a platform for connecting remote workers to work locations. These contributions earned him the Global Startup Leadership Award in 2021. And with the uMake team, he's successfully organized over 300 events, which have engaged 40,000 participants, and has really played a huge role on putting Palestine's entrepreneurial landscape on the map. But finally, Iyad is the Startup Programs and International Partnerships Manager at Gaza Sky Geeks, Gaza's first startup accelerator and tech education hub. Iyad brings over 10 years of experience working in banking, technology, and consumer products across Europe and the US, and he helps entrepreneurs build companies, launch them, and raise investments from one of the world's toughest places in Gaza. He holds an MBA from the European Business School in Germany. So with that, now that everyone has a sense of who we have on the panel, I'm gonna dive in. Awesome. And I just wanna make sure, I wanna repin Iyad. I think he had some internet. All right, awesome. Great, okay, let's dive in. If you have questions from the audience, definitely encourage you. We're gonna try to keep like 10 minutes towards the end to try and get to those. So feel free to drop them in the chat as things go along, but particularly focus on that last 10 minutes so that we can easily review them together. So I want to get started just by kind of laying the groundwork for everyone, speaking about the culture and history of entrepreneurship in Palestine. From my own knowledge, I think it's fair to say that this movement really took hold about 8-ish years ago in Palestine. But Amber, would you be able to, given your own experience supporting entrepreneurs in Palestine for just about a decade, would you be able to give us kind of a quick rundown of the history and what really got things started and how this entrepreneurial ecosystem started to grow in Palestine?
Yes, sure. First, Hani, thank you. And to the co-host, thank you for helping organize this event. I'm very glad to be here with you all and to tell you a bit more about what we're building in Palestine, which I think is incredibly promising. So I'm probably the veteran of the group. I've been around for some time. I've been in Palestine now 14 years and working with entrepreneurs for 13. So basically this started about 2008 with the launch of Sadara Ventures. So Sadara Ventures was the first Palestinian VC. It was an effort between a Palestinian and an Israeli partner. And they started a fund that invested in Palestinian tech startups. That fund did okay. And look, it started way before anything had really launched. And it was looking for companies that needed $1 million or more in investment, and that was a bit high for where the ecosystem was at the time. And so it invested in a few very good companies like Thaher and some others. And with that experience, there was also some efforts from the donor community to start incubators and accelerators. So they had started an incubator with Leaders Organization that then became an accelerator called Fast Forward, which I also managed during my time here. From that also came Gaza Sky Geeks, efforts from the donors again. Gaza Sky Geeks started with the support of Google for Startups and some others. And so that really got us going. When Ibtikar started, what was happening was you had a lot of efforts at the ideation and acceleration and incubation stage, and Sadada investing much later stages. And so there was a pretty significant funding gap. And that's where we tried to step in with Ibtikar, was to fill that funding gap and offer small amounts of funding that wouldn't take over a company's cap table as a $1 million investment would for Sadada, for something very small and very early. And so we were doing investments in partnership with accelerators, one, to also get them sustainable sources of funding. These accelerators were suffering because donors would pay for programs that wouldn't pay, for example, for the building or the electricity, which really was quite important. And something that wasn't tied to how many people they were accelerating, but was really tied to success. So we partnered with both Gaza Sky Geeks and leaders, and with them found some great companies that we continue to support. Since then, what I've seen is a tremendous development in our startup ecosystem, where we're no longer seeing just, young graduates from universities coming to us because they can't find work. And they say, okay, this incubator program sounds pretty good. It's a 4-month program. I'll get some money and I'll try something new. What we're seeing now is young professionals, so people that have been in their industries for several years. They've had an idea in the back of their head. They've solved a problem in that industry, and they're coming to us for funding to grow. They're coming to us already with a product. They're coming to us with some traction already, maybe in Palestine or beyond, and saying, I need money to continue to sell and to expand. And so that to us is really promising. One last thing I'd really like to point out about in terms of gender, and it's not parity, certainly, but we have a portfolio. 30% of all employees across the board in our portfolio are women, and that's a very unique number. You don't see that in the West, and you certainly don't see that throughout the world. So it's a number that I'm very proud of, and that I continue to try to engage more women in our ecosystem. So hopefully that sets the tone a bit of where we've come, or how far we've come.
Yeah, thank you so much for that overview, Amber. And yeah, it has been really an amazing 10 years or so. I'd love to hear a little bit, and you touched on it at the end of your point there, Amber, about kind of like the cultural shift since entrepreneurship and tech entrepreneurship has been introduced to Palestine. Maybe both Daoud and Iyad, given kind of how your roles as really like focal points for the community, if you could speak to like how the cultural view, particularly from young people, of entrepreneurship has evolved over the past 10 years. Today, how do people, view like launching or working for a startup? Either one of you, feel free to.
Gaza first always, so Iyad, go ahead.
Thanks, Daoud, and thank you, Hani, for hosting us today. I think building on what Amber just shared with us, tech entrepreneurship has come a long way over the past 10 years. It's certainly started to pick up. So we could say in Gaza, more specifically, and also in the West Bank, from the work that we do with entrepreneurs in there, we could tell that it has momentum, and it's grabbing a lot of interest from young and older people, both in Gaza and the West Bank, and that's as you could tell, it's because of the job opportunities that could provide for them. It's because of the global connectivity that it promises. It's because of like the ideas around impact and innovation that startups usually bring to the table. But and also that there is a supportive ecosystem that is continuing to grow, not just Gaza Sky Geeks and Ibtikar, but like many other organizations are now active and starting to support entrepreneurs, making the risks less likely for entrepreneurs. However, it's essential also to acknowledge that entrepreneurship still has a lot of challenges. And that challenge, like the biggest challenges that we know today, are basically the political instabilities. So that remains like one challenge that has been there for quite some time, and it's continuing to impact the ecosystem. but also that there is like limited infrastructure, probably less opportunities to get investment, especially at like various stages. So some entrepreneurs at certain stages could have multiple opportunities to find investment, other maybe less so. But despite all of these hurdles, we're seeing a lot of, entrepreneurs and people coming towards entrepreneurship. So the short answer to your question is, entrepreneurship is widely accepted in here, both culturally and professionally as a profession. I assume it's the same for the West Bank, but I'll let Daoud talk about it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Iyad and Amber and Annie for starting this conversation. So there's different things we can look at. I would say it's still a challenge starting a startup, especially a tech startup in Palestine, considering a lot of things. But internally, we can look at even entrepreneurship itself. It's not yet a mainstream thing. Your father or mother will not tell you, oh, I want you to become an entrepreneur. No, they still want you to become a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. So it's still, in my opinion, entrepreneurship it is still for a very few people, as where it is in anywhere else in the world. And in Palestine, it becomes with a special flavor. So I would say maybe we can see, I would say, a short time entrepreneurs that sometimes we see them because they may lack other opportunities, whether it's can't find a job, or a student, as Amber said, who wants to find an opportunity, because we have seen that there is a lot of international aid coming into this sector just to push entrepreneurship through grants and different things. And some young people, whether students or fresh grads, saw that as an opportunity for them to do this. So if we look at the actual entrepreneurship scene, I would say it is still very small, and the number of the startups is not that big. When we are looking at a startup with a product active in the market and generating revenues or have raised some funds, but as also what Amber mentioned, today we see more young professionals and even senior professionals entering this journey. We see university professors as well who are starting their startups out of research and R&D, which is something we did not see 10 years ago. That's why you would see someone with 10 years of experience start leaving their job and starting a startup. And I would say our work at uMake and Founder Institute since 2018 helped in that, because we mainly focused on working with young professionals. Maybe only one startup, the founder of it was a student, a university student, and the other 28 startups that we helped to graduate was young professionals. Yeah, I will leave it for you from here.
Mo, did you want to jump in on something?
Yes, thank you for this great event. By the way, Hani, I mean, I'm sure that everybody's going to benefit from it. So I want to just comment on two things. The first one is from Daoud. I agree with you. The ecosystem is small. There is a small number of startups in the Palestinian ecosystem. But on the other side of the equation, also, we should look at the quality of ideas coming from the Palestinian ecosystem. And in my opinion, the quality coming from, those young people is tremendous. It's, it's worldwide. It's, it's a giant leap forward for, ideas and I want to say in the MENA region. I've talked to a lot of startups that are, bound to change human history. I'm not kidding. Synergy Med, for example. I don't know if you guys heard about it, or Peace from Gaza, or Crybaby or whatnot. those are all big ideas that, you know, if they succeed, they are going to change the course of human history, in my opinion. And those are coming from, you know, siege cities under occupation with so little resources, you know, coming from, you know, girls that are younger than my daughter. I mean, you know, what more do you want? So I agree. The quantity is small, but the quality, in my opinion, is huge. Veranda is another example from Gaza that got first prize in Tokyo, in a Tokyo event, pitch event, and also got invited to the UK, done by two sisters from Gaza. So that gives you an idea about what's coming from the Palestinian ecosystem. And the other one is, you know, something that Amber said. I totally agree with Amber. You know, the female startups need to be actually encouraged and supported a little bit more, in my opinion, also from talking to different entities in the ecosystem. I mean, I'm not going to brag, but in Peleset Angels, the advisory board is formed mainly by females and less by males. And that's because there's a lot of things on the female side that we are blindsided to. We don't see. But if the advisory board is formed from females, then, you know, they can actually tell us what we're missing, and, you know, they can steer our success into that, you know, side, or, you know, that path. Also, I want to just give a quick shout out for Joey Mismar. He's just joined. Joey, or Ghaith Mismar, he's actually the director of the non-profit side of Peleset Angels, which is something I'm going to talk about maybe a little bit later on. But, you know, just let you know that both sides, the for-profit and the non-for-profit, we are both adamant that, you know, the female-led startups should have more support, and that's what we're aiming for. Thanks.
Awesome. So many interesting threads to pull on here. In a second, I want to ask Mahmoud specifically, you know, about the thought-making process behind launching a startup. But because we started to hear about some of the great startups already coming out of Palestine, maybe Amber, you can talk to us in your tenure in Palestine, like about some of the success stories that you've seen, particularly, you know, that Ibtikar has invested in, but doesn't have to be limited to those, and just what some of the characteristics are of those companies that have been particularly successful.
Sure. Hi. Hopefully this is a better connection. I had to move spots. Sure. So I will first toot our own horn because, you know, shameless plugs. But so some of our top startups right now, you mentioned them in my bio. So we have Alma Health. Alma Health was started by two Palestinians based in Abu Dhabi. It is a chronic health management platform. They provide health services. So everything from doctor consultations online to pharmaceutical delivery to labs at home, all on an app. This company started a few years ago. We invested last year and has already doubled in value, is getting ready to raise their Series B, and doing incredibly well. And all of the tech talent is in Palestine. And that is a great success for us. We also have Mashvisor, which is our first investment of Fund 1. Now, Mashvisor is unique. It came out of a Startup Weekend event. They actually won second place. And months later, one of the founders, Peter Abuzalaf, saw that he was still getting hits on this website. So he said, okay, I'm going to explore this, found a co-founder, Mohammed Jibrini, and they came to Ibtikar for their first employee. This company now has dozens of employees. It's growing month over month. It provides real estate analytics and data for US real estate investors, and all, again, from Palestine. The entire tech team, all the marketing team, the sales team is all in Palestine. And this is also a very unique example because it shows that you can actually sell to a market like the US from Palestine. You know, the Mohammeds become Mo's, the Ahmeds become Adams, and they start selling at night. And it's really, really interesting how it works, but it works. The last one I'll mention is Cortava, formerly Gamify. So Cortava was the first startup from Palestine accepted to Startup Chile. And from that, they started they opened the Latin American market, which is now their biggest market. They've, of course, pivoted a few times from when they started to now. And so what they offer now is a loyalty program for e-commerce. Anything that sells online, any company that sells online, from the tiny ones on Shopify, to L'Oreal and Garnier, et cetera, who have their huge e-commerce sites. And so they're able to provide these services to engage and retain and help customers buy more. So very good platform, doing really well across Latin America. And finally, maybe a few that are not in our portfolio. User Pilot is a company that is doing really well out of Palestine. Raised a Series A a few months ago from Silicon Badia, selling to the US market as well, and actually globally, so doing really well. And I think Mo, you mentioned a few others that are maybe in the earlier stages, and you asked me what do they differentiate, or what differentiates some of these companies. I think for us, and because we're a VC, and that's what differentiates us, right? And is that we're looking for huge returns. We're looking for that hockey stick of growth. And so the companies that we look at have to have a market that is bigger than Palestine. They have to be able to expand across the MENA region. They have to be able to expand globally. And so that means that a lot of companies that are very good, solid companies here in Palestine may not be a good fit for us. So that's one thing, is all of these companies are thinking big. They're thinking huge markets and huge opportunities. And so that's what makes them really exciting for us. But there are other types of funds and funders out there that maybe could fund companies that are incredibly good, that maybe don't have those characteristics. But that's what really differentiates these guys for us.
Awesome. Great. Well, I want to just pivot a little bit and speak to the founder experience. So Mahmoud, could you walk us through kind of the decision, the thought process for you when it came to launching Turqat? And yeah, I mean, in particular, maybe also building off of Amber's last point, like Turqat, obviously you guys are building something on the ground in Palestine right now. I think there's application for the rest of the region though. So, how you arrived at the decision to launch a startup, build something in Palestine, and then what your kind of vision is for how that expands across the region.
Absolutely. And thank you for hosting us, Paul, Hani, and for the efforts and everyone joining us. I want to preface this a little bit, and I think looking at the global trend into kind of finding a startup. We have a saying in Arabic, الحاجة أم الاختراع, which is the need is the mother of innovation. And I think about a decade ago or so, globally, you can see how people are looking into how to improve on the needs. I could give an example, like people have accommodation, but they want to improve on that, so they started Airbnb, for example. You have transportation, but then you can improve on that with an Uber. You have internal communications. You can improve that with Slack. And I think that's also coming to Palestine as well, which is how can we improve on some of the things? One of the things about the Palestinian market is that it's underdeveloped in most of the sectors. That's what makes people think, oh, how can I improve, for example, payment systems? How can I improve on, for us, it was more about transportation and mobility and things like that. So the idea is how can we go from the basic needs and meeting the basic needs into something that's better for people to use. Again, that's kind of the global trend, but it's coming down here. Even if you're looking lately into AI, how can I improve productivity? How can I improve other things through AI? And that's, more companies are coming into it, more startups are being started into that. The thing behind it all is kind of experience. I know that Amber mentioned this, Daoud mentioned this as well, but moving more into young professionals and people with more experience in the field. that also gives better chances into thinking about what's the next big idea that I can do and start a business here that can maybe grow globally. Again, I see a problem, I see something that can be improved. Probably it's not only me facing this. How can I do some research? And then is there something for Palestine? Is it something regional? Is it something global even? And then, building something around it. And that's why, as mentioned by the panelists here, that you see a shift sometimes from people, professionals, going into starting their own business, not just as, oh, I came up with an idea in college and now I'm going to start working on this. For us specifically, we thought about layering this and taking the Palestinian market as a test market. Because, as I mentioned, it's underdeveloped. So maybe start, pitching something to the Palestinian market, and then seeing how the people react to it, what people might have other problems in it as well. So we can develop our startup and take it regional. So we have a long list of things that we want to do. The good thing about the Palestinian market is that it's easier to test things with it. The downside of it is that it's a small market. It might not be the right sample for you. Many challenges, many difficulties that we face, and I'm sure everyone knows about them here. So it might not be the right sample when you test things here in Palestine. But the good thing is that you can try multiple things, reiterate things, and then when you take your product regionally or globally, you have something that you have built and walked through at least, and have some experience in it.
And one thing, regardless of whether or not the startup is building something focused on Palestinian or regional market or focused on places like North America, obviously there needs to be talent, not just talented founders, but employees who are filling these companies and executing on these ideas. So I know Mahmoud would love to hear about your experience looking and hiring for talent. And then I know Iyad and Daoud, especially, you guys both have programs at your respective organizations that are involved with upskilling, et cetera. So if you three could kind of just speak to the talent that's available in Palestine for these startups. And generally, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses of the talent pool?
Sure, I'll do same with Daoud. So I guess Iyad first, Ghazza first.
Well, I think that's becoming a thing, but thank you, Mahmoud. I think in general, I'd like to answer your question, Hani. So we're seeing that entrepreneurs are looking at three main things or three main places to find talents once they establish their companies. The first one is personal network. So depending on what they need, they look within their personal network. Rarely that you'll find someone posting a job online if they have not, unless they have already looked into their personal network. The other thing we're seeing quite often happen is they depend a lot on referrals of other team members. So if they want to bring in tech talent, for example, they look into that, and other team members are helping them with it. And also organizations like Gaza Sky Geeks are now offering that kind of support. So if an entrepreneur is looking for talent to join the team, they could come to us. We partner with them to identify, select talent that is suitable for them, define the contract, and actually help them make and release payments to the talents. Now, in other cases, when personal network referrals and work with other organizations is not an option, we're seeing some of them post jobs on social media and online job platforms, but that's less so. Unless a team is more than 10 to 15 people, they tend to do it within personal networks and referrals for the most part. And with that, I see Mahmoud or Daoud if they want to add more.
Sure, yeah, I would mention that there's a challenge also now finding the right talent, whether I would say specifically with tech, especially after the availability of remote jobs, and also the brain draining by our neighbor occupation by Israel, where many of the talented tech people find more attractive jobs in Israel, which leaves the local startups looking to their options, which is very hard to find a good talent then. So it becomes now a challenge for a local startup to be attractive for local talents, because many talents are going to Israel or to other international companies where they offer them better salaries, incentives, etc. It may look as a good thing on an individual level that those guys getting jobs, but on the long run for the whole ecosystem, it is not helping. Maybe it will, I don't know, but at least what we see now, our startups dying to find the right talent they need, because they are competing with other players. And the other thing on other sectors, I would say, it also becomes harder to find the local talent when you are scaling up and going to other markets, because as we mentioned, our market is small, fragmented. In order for the startup to survive and thrive, they need to go to other markets in the region. And the startups Ambar mentioned, they all work in regions outside Palestine. Maybe they have their team here, they tested the product here, but then they needed immediately to go outside. And once you do that, for example, you can't find a chief of people in Palestine or a chief of marketing or a CMO, because that kind of experience yet did not happen in the local ecosystem. So it is true we have a lot of talents, but I would say it is also limited, and there is high competition within the region or other internationals. And the good thing that we see that there's different initiatives by different companies who work on training fresh grads or those who want to shift their career paths and prepare them to the market and connect them with other local companies. We see Gaza SkyX, for example, do something like that, and we see others like Axos and other initiatives doing something like that, which is good. And also many of the startups started doing what the Palestinian private sector used to do when they get fresh grads, have their own internal training programs to prepare this talent, where they bring people and they invest in them for 3 to 6 months until they are ready to start giving back. So this is my perspective about this. I would give it back to you.
I really don't have much to add. Daoud, you're spot on. Iyad, you're very spot on. Yes, it's challenging to hire, especially for a startup. You're competing not only with established companies, international companies, you're competing with the Israeli market as well. It's pulling talent from everywhere, from tech, from other sectors, even labor, you know, all of that is being drained. So it is challenging as a startup. The good thing is that there are some initiatives to upgrade some of the skills for fresh graduates, as mentioned. So that's what we try to look for. We try to kind of rub shoulders with the community, staying around when we need to find talent, because it's not kind of a traditional hiring process, as also Iyad mentioned. It's more of you have to find the like-minded people that won't come in, try to leave. It's not very well fit for them at the startup level. So that's what we try to do. But you know, Iyad and Daoud covered it very well.
Awesome. Mo, I'll give you a chance to answer this and kind of combine it with a question for both you and Amber, because I want to be able to give the audience a bit of an overview of what the funding environment looks like in Palestine as well, with which you're both involved in. So So yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear a little bit more about, let's call it kind of the maturity level and the education level of actually the investors in Palestine. Do you feel like folks have pretty good training when it comes to looking at these more like tech venture backable startups? Has that understanding kind of reached a critical mass of investors in Palestine? And then on the flip side, when you both have gone out and looked for investors to join you, whether as LPs in Ibtikar or as angel investors as part of your group, Mo, what is the pitch to them? How do you attract those folks to actually put money down into both of your organizations?
I'm gonna take the woods route and I say, you know, Amber can start because البلاد أول إشي غزة بعدين البلاد بعدين أمريكا. So أول إشي Amber can start.
How funny. All right, thanks, Mo. So one, about the experience of investors, look, it's improving, but it's improving with experience, which I guess is normal. I've just sort of, that's a weird thing I just said, but basically we're learning as we go. It's very hard to import expertise. It's very hard to bring somebody that has, you know, been running a fund in the MENA region and to bring them here to start a fund. It's very hard to bring Americans in the diaspora or anyone with the right experience. And so when we started Ibtikar, I had never managed a fund. My co-founder, Habib, had managed a fund for Palestinians in Israel. And so that was our expertise. And we learned and we iterated. And you know, I joined things like the Coffin Fellows to really gain network and experience and be able to have people to go to when we needed help. And so that's the type of network we've been trying to build. In terms of, you know, people around us and our LPs, we have both. We have people with a lot of experience that have invested in VC, and we have those that have never even heard about it. And, you know, and they invest in us because they want to support Palestinian startups and Palestinian entrepreneurs. And we have to guide them through what it means. It means, you know, you're going to see losses for the first several years until we start seeing increases in valuation. And it's going to take a long time to realize any gains until we have an exit. And so that has been a learning process even for our LPs. You know, in terms of co-investors in the country, and I think Mo will add to this for sure, you know, there's people with money, but it's people that are used to investing in real estate or much more basic businesses. And so when we're talking about being able to assess a tech startup, again, that's expertise we had to bring in from the outside. And so it's, you know, thankfully now I think we have garnered a few years of investment. We've put around us a group of people. And so hopefully co-investing with us will help some of these angels. And, you know, Mo has experience investing, so he's managing to bring in that sort of experience. But, you know, we're a closed off society in many ways, and that makes it hard to bring in expertise. Now, how did we convince our investors? Again, I mentioned it a bit. A lot of people just want to help. But, you know, that was, so fund one, we say this, fund one was raised on a promise, right? It's, you know, we're going to try to support Palestinian entrepreneurs and join us. And, you know, some of them said, absolutely. We've been donating to Palestine for years. I would love to make a profit off of Palestine. And then fund two is raised on a bit of success. So we have some success metrics to show. But if we don't have an exit in either of those funds by fund three, there will be no fund three. And so the pressure is really on, because Sadara had some success, but it was a startup that is Israeli that moved part of its operations into Palestine, and they did an IPO. And so can you really count that as a Palestinian success story? Some people will question that. So we need to show that we can create an exit from Palestine, that we can create this by ourselves, with our own people investing and with our own people managing this fund, and be able to grow a startup from Palestine for the world. And so that is the pressure we're under to really help that company grow to that level of success. Mo, pass it on to you.
Thank you, Amber. So definitely, after the recent events, specifically Shireen Abu Akleh, Allah yarhamha, and the Jerusalem events that were going on, people in the diaspora became really interested in helping Palestine and Palestinians in any way, shape, or form. And that's that was part of why we formed Peleset Angels, was because we wanted to help, but we didn't want to help just the medical or educational sides in Palestine, because there's a lot of organizations doing that. We wanted to do something from our own background, and that's when the founders came together, about 10-12 founders, and formed Peleset Angels. I agree with Amber. We talked to a lot of Palestinian investors in Palestine. They are more interested in investing in art, or buying real estate or a piece of land or whatnot, more than helping the startups, because it's a little bit foreign concept still in Palestine, I believe. But I can see good changes coming, especially that Saudi Arabia and UAE and Egypt, they're all having some huge startup market. So maybe that's going to spill somehow into the Palestinian culture somehow. And also the young generation is making a lot of changes. I'm looking here and I'm seeing all young generation that are doing really amazing stuff, creating startups, coming up with ideas. So you guys are the future. Just keep doing what you're doing. As far as how we are convincing our investors to invest, I'm going to leave that to Joey, because Joey is the finance guy. He is a CPA. He has a accounting agency. He deals with a lot of these investors. So Joey is the expert on this one. I am just the beautiful face in front of Peleset Angels. I'm just kidding. Please, Joey, go ahead.
Definitely.
No, thank you so much. Go ahead.
No, I was saying.
Thank you so much, Mo.
Thank you. Yeah. We lost Joey, I think.
No, thank you so much, Mo, and thank you, everybody. I mean, for us, what we're really working is both that, believe it or not, the charitable angle and the investment angle. And what we're trying to do for the entire Palestinians that live abroad, which is roughly 5 to 7 million that live abroad, is to try to get them to be the ones that actually will be the funding mechanism to help our brothers and sisters back home to be able to contribute and help these startups, so they can get to a level that they can go through to Series A, Series B, and God willing, become publicly traded companies.
We are the gap between the pre-seed and early stages and Amber, and that's what we try to cover, because there is a big gap in there, and that's what Peleset Angels is all about, is getting investors to invest and cover that gap. So, and luckily in the United States, they have the Internal Revenue Services. They have a what you call non-profit organization, which is part of Peleset Angels is non-profit. So any Palestinian that donates to the non-profit side can get tax breaks. So it's a win-win situation. Startups can get money, and also the investors themselves can get tax breaks from the American government. And that's the angle that we're playing on in the non-profit side.
All right.
Exactly.
We have very minimal time left. I want to really just leave two kind of last questions for the panelists to speak on, summarizing some of the themes that I've seen in the chat. One is if anyone could really quickly speak to the legal frameworks in Palestine and kind of the what it takes to work with the government in order to actually establish a startup. And then two is, we've kind of been dancing around it, but for folks that are outside of Palestine, how can they get involved? What does that involvement look like today? And then moving forward for the people who are in here, how can they get involved? Daoud, feel free to start off if you'd like.
So for the legal aspect, what we do, most of the startups, they do incorporate abroad, usually in Delaware. So many of the Palestinian startups are legally American registered companies because the local legal structure is not that fancy. And locally, they just use a company to do their work on the market. Otherwise, everything like the cap table, their structure, all of that goes abroad, whether in Delaware or any other structures in the region, whether UK, Dubai, etc. That's like the fastest answer for that. And in terms of the diaspora engagement, we know that we have a wide, wealthy, knowledgeable diaspora, and also in the tech and business scene, but the engagement is very minimal. We know that there's different efforts are happening now, like Peleset and some LBs with Ibtikar fund, etc. But still, it's very minimal. If the question is what they can do, the simple answer would be you can do almost in every area. You can contribute, whether in funding, mentorship, market access, helping those founders to get to markets. That will be great, because I would say the most important thing for Palestinian startups is to get a helpful and facilitate access to other markets, because it is impossible almost to survive only on the Palestinian market as a technology startup. And I will leave it to the others.
I'm going to jump in real quick here. As Daoud mentioned, the local legal system is not very supportive. There has been an update to the company's registration law, how to start a company, how to register it, get the paperwork ready. You still have to go through a long process. You have to go and open a tax file. You have to do a lot of things to operate in Palestine. It's a bit easier if you are registering somewhere else, starting a company, let's say in Delaware, and having another company here working directly as a tech support office, let's call it. However, it's doable. You know, that's what we keep saying here. You know, it is doable to get through things. It's not the best ideal situation. There are a lot of efforts. World Bank is doing a few efforts. IFC is doing some efforts too. Develop the community, which is very optimistic. You know, I mean, for us as startups, for VCs as well, for the community itself, it's good that there are efforts put into developing the legal framework here in Palestine. The other topic to talk about, which was how can we work with diaspora? Also, as Daoud mentioned, you know, open access to markets, that's great. Helping in mentorship is amazing. That kind of experience sharing that, as mentioned, our market is small, is fragmented. So any thoughts, any ideas that can be shared and can be talked with local startups would be of great benefit. Funding, whether directly or through VCs, also would be very beneficial. If you're able to, you can go ahead and directly invest in a startup. If not, you can have someone on your behalf, like a VC or another entity, you know, working with that. So that's very helpful. That type of thing, and maybe you know, think about an idea that you can start with a Palestinian team as well. So you can be a co-founder of a startup yourself with a co-founder here in Palestine and have a team, have a startup of your own. So that's also another way to work with the community here. And I'll leave it at that.
Any final words from the other panelists? I know we're a little bit over. I can stick around.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Iyad.
I'd like to add one thing. Sorry. Yeah, apologies for that. So one key thing, I guess, is it's very important for everyone to know that the Palestinian tech ecosystem or entrepreneurship ecosystem is pretty young. It's nascent, but starting to pick up. So as everyone on this panel has said earlier today, 10 years ago, we didn't have X. 10 years ago, we weren't able to do Y, But today, we've overcome a lot of these challenges. Today, we're seeing a lot more companies becoming more successful. We're seeing a lot more startups being able to raise and bring in even other, regional accelerators or investors to co-invest with Ibtikar, for example. Now, Ibtikar does quite a lot of the work. They invest in quite a lot of companies, and there's so much pressure on them, being the only investor or like institutional investor in Palestine, out angel investors from abroad and working with them. So the entrepreneurship ecosystem is picking up, it's improving. The accelerators, whether Gaza Sky Geeks or uMake or any other accelerator, we're becoming better at what we do, which is support entrepreneurs. The entrepreneurs themselves are becoming much more aware, much stronger, and they're coming back to build more companies. So we don't think now is the time to, just drop the startup scene and focus on something else like talent or AI. We think now is the time to capitalize on, the startup ecosystem and support more entrepreneurs and taking it from that nascent stage to a much more advanced one within the next, let's say shorter period of time, like let's say not 10 years, but like 7 or 8 years. Thank you.
Hey, Hani, quick question for you. Have you ever thought of, creating like a WhatsApp channel or, Skype channel or whatever it is, for people to connect on like this? Because, we have a lot to talk about, but 1 hour is not enough. And
Yeah.
by the way, I talk a lot and my wife always complains. So just letting you know.
Yeah, no, so for Viaka and members of the Viaka network, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's free to join right now. And we do have a Slack workspace where folks are, like sharing articles and having conversations like this one, and also about other topics as it relates to the broader MENA region. So one last plug, I guess, to sign up for that. And I'm sure there are some other initiatives as well that people can get involved in or join, whether through Viaka or others that are like very specifically Palestine focused too.
Excellent. Perfect. Thank you.
Well, I think, unfortunately, as you said, Mo, there's so much to say. Amber, did you want to jump in with anything?
No, it's okay. I've said my goodbyes in the chat.
Awesome. Well,
yeah. Hani, if may I just 30 seconds to thank you for organizing this and advise anyone who is a founder or a part of a startup to join Viaka Network, because I personally joined it a few months back and get a lot of exposure and connections from the Palestinian diaspora. So Viakas have been very helpful. Thank you, Hani, for that and for hosting us today.
Thank you, Daoud. Really appreciate it. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining. In particular, thank you to you five for sharing your experiences and insights. As I mentioned in the chat, I'll share a recording afterwards. And I think there's a lot of people that would love to build connections off this. So hopefully this event, accomplished that at the very least, introducing more of the world to the exciting things going on in Palestine. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.